Dear viewer, menstruation has always been seen as a topic of shame, one casted in shadows of stigma. The silence surrounding it has in fact amplified the need to solve a crucial human rights issue, period poverty. This not only results in the lack of access to proper sanitary products, but additionally leads to burdens in regards to mental health, education, and well-being overall. As we present a short film that sheds light on this pressing matter, we ask you to watch with empathy and an open heart. We've brought individuals from different parts of the world to reflect the change that's been long overdue. In efforts to spread awareness, we hope you will join this conversation in understanding menstruation, eliminating taboos, and ending the cycle of injustice. Join us in starting the conversation, challenging the stigma, and standing up for a world where menstruation isn't forbidden, but embraced. We truly appreciate your presence and commitment as you are actively playing a crucial role for a brighter future. Sincerely, people with periods. For the 800 million menstruators around the world, over 500 million lack some sort of adequate resources to sustain their periods. Where does this happen? Well, it happens in
Brazil,
Kenya,
in the United Kingdom,
Uganda,
United States,
Liberia. Period poverty is the lack of access to menstrual products, hygiene facilities, waste management, and education.
Not only is it the lack of menstrual products, it's also a poverty of information, knowledge, and education in multiple aspects.
a globally obscure crisis in dire need of a voice.
I first became aware of the importance of addressing menstrual equity when I founded a Girl Up Club in my community. It was quite a very rational action because I felt like I came from a very privileged background, and based on my experiences, I didn't really experience, or I wasn't truly aware of many gender related problems, and I wanted to educate myself. And eventually one of the main issues that I encountered in my community through research and through like in-person projects that my club did in the city that I live in were very much related to access to menstrual products and menstrual care and education.
I first realized the importance of menstrual equity to those that menstruate when I joined the teaching profession. I started in a school that did not have any female teacher, so the children had stigma to approach the male teachers when it came to their periods.
So my first exposure to menstrual equity as a concept was at this conference where one of the speakers actually talked about her own experience with period poverty. And I just remember being so blown away by the fact that she had the courage, first of all, to talk about periods in front of other people and on a stage, because I, before this, had never experienced anything like that. Periods had always been something taboo, something that you don't really talk about. And just seeing that you could, in fact, talk about periods, and the impact that not talking about periods had had on her personally, because period poverty wasn't addressed as a political issue.
I first became aware of the need for reproductive justice when somebody very close to me was misdiagnosed with a personality disorder after she had experienced symptoms of premenstrual dysphoric disorder, or PMDD. The fact that this misdiagnosis happened showed us that even health professionals are not aware of the mental implications of periods in some cases. And so this led me to look and see what other research and funding was hugely lacking, and realised that the mental implications were were one strand of a much bigger problem.
Living with my dad enabled me to realize the importance of my period and how to prepare for it. Because he could not muster the courage to discuss a taboo subject, I spent the vast majority of my teenage years struggling to manage my period.
Menstrual equity has always been a priority for me, but I think it became more crucial when I visited a children's home in 2018 and saw firsthand how young menstruators were heavily impacted by the lack of sanitary pads. That experience, coupled with more experiences, I think heightened my resolve to do something about it, and that led to the birth of my NGO Unlimited Seas initiative.
According to ActionAid, in 2022, 12% of the UK considered themselves to be in period poverty. However, in 2023, that number jumped to 21. This huge difference, which in reality is more than 1 million menstruators, or 1 in 5, is due to a cost of living crisis that has completely decimated the UK.
For many regions in Kenya, I think affordability is such a hurdle. A lot of menstruators, especially from low-income families, find it really difficult to allocate a portion of their budget to menstrual products because there's just already so many other essential expenses.
When I realized this challenge, I had to seek for a private room from the administration so that we could assist them during this time. I was glad to be given a room, and I used the portion of my salary to buy some necessary requirements such as basins, clean water, and the menstrual products plus some soap, so that during this period they can also be hygienic.
The impact of period poverty in Kenya goes beyond the physical struggle. It's a matter of dignity. So many elderly menstruators from underserved communities quietly shoulder this burden, often reminding me that addressing this issue is a matter of respect and justice.
So the issue of period poverty is very culture and country dependent. I would say that there are two broad categories within period poverty itself, right? And within the PAD project, this is how we frame period poverty and our approach to dealing with it in different countries or regions. So in the United States and in most developed countries, the issue is with affordability of products. In many other countries, the issue is with accessibility of products, and those two issues are very different. So within the United States, most people, regardless of where you live, can walk into a convenience store that is within walking distance and hold in their hands a pack of pads or tampons or whatever it may be. That might not be the case in other countries or in very rural areas, right? But in most of the United States and most developed countries, you can walk into a convenience store and hold a pack of pads. The issue comes in, and period poverty kicks in, where people don't have enough money on hand to actually be able to afford that pack of pads. And in the United States, these products are taxed as luxury goods in many states, which kind of adds on to the barrier of accessibility, right? Even though these are basic necessities for most menstruators, for most women, most people who menstruate, they're taxed as luxury goods. And that adds on to the financial burden. In addition to it just being difficult to afford products in general, products are cheaper when bought in bulk, right? Period products are cheaper when bought in bulk than when bought as smaller units. And so the price actually increases the less money you have on hand to buy them the first time around. So women who are buying these products in smaller portions are actually spending more money per year on period products than women who have the money to upfront buy the bulk portion. So it's very regressive in that way in terms of affordability. There's an additional issue of periods being sort of the last priority for many menstruators, right? A lot of these people have children. Maybe they prioritize buying diapers for their children over buying period products for themselves. A lot of these people have families, even if they don't have families, food is important. It's essential to live, right? So they'll prioritize that over buying period products. And so because all of these things take precedence over being able to menstruate with peace of mind and not having to constantly, be worried about, am I leaking through because I'm using, paper towels to staunch my flow, that is what period poverty looks like in the United States for the most part.
Products such as pads, tampons, and menstrual cups are really important, but when you look at pads and tampons, they tend to have a higher impact in our environment as we try to go for a more climate conscious mindset. So definitely menstrual cups have come in really handy, and it makes it a lot easier for communities who do not have readily available supplies for pads and tampons to just use something that is so reusable, that is really safe to use, and not only that, that just provides a better alternative compared to the other two products. But then again, considering how in some communities it is much easier to use pads and tampons depending on the situation, it is all about making sure women have accessibility to all these products, and it is so critical that accessibility is a huge focus on period poverty and those who want to eliminate it. When it comes to obtaining period products, affordability and accessibility are definitely huge issues in America, especially when it comes with taxes such as like the pink tax accompanying them. Oftentimes, homeless menstruators are out of the question because of the fact that homeless shelters just do not have the means to support them like this. And not only that, if you live well below the poverty line here in America, programs like WIC and food stamps do not help you. They do not contain any sort of money, any sort of referral, or any sort of like system to buy period products through. Oftentimes the government kind of puts this as a back burner issue, not even considering the fact that there are menstruators who are struggling to access these products. And I think that like having accessibility as a top priority when it comes to period products is so critical, and also the fact that it just kind of allows issues that are much deeper in society to continue. "77% of Brazilian menstruators have used alternative items to replace sanitary pads. Some of the items reported were toilet paper, cloth, paper towels, newspaper, and even breadcrumbs. This data is according to Folha de São Paulo. Now, according to a survey conducted by the brand Sempre Livre, 50% of Brazilian menstruators resorted to those substitutions in 2022 due to lack of money in order to afford menstrual pads. 28% of them experienced urinary tract infections or cystitis, and 18% of them suffered from fungal or bacterial vaginal infections."
In 2023, 37% of menstruators have admitted to using tissues or cotton wool to staunch blood flow. 13% use socks or other clothes. 9% use newspaper or other paper. 40% of women and menstruators have left their pads in for longer to avoid having to buy more and use more, and 8% have left tampons in for much longer than they should. This can cause issues such as toxic shock syndrome or other issues.
That is really sad to hear, because accessibility should not be an issue when it comes to products that millions use every day, and also the fact that homeless women in general, or just menstruators in general, deal with a lot of adversity, so a period should not be at least the least of their concern.
I think economic disparities may result in menstruators using less expensive and low quality menstrual products. Last year on a local newspaper, I read of a case where menstruators were having to use shopping bags as pads. Why is this still happening in 2023? Health education in Kenya has really evolved, but I think there is still a reluctance to talk about menstruation openly. And POV, I think that lack of comprehensive menstrual education continues to contribute to stigmatization and misinformation, which, if you ask me, ultimately hinders progress in menstrual equity.
When I was younger and I used to go to school, I remember that when I was on my period and I wanted to go to the bathroom, instead of just naturally getting my menstrual pad and going, I remember that I used to hide it in my school sweater. And after conducting research and trying to rationalize this, after being aware of the issues of menstrual education and menstrual equity, I remember looking back and thinking, but why did I do that? Like, was I ashamed? And I don't think I was. I think because it was an issue that I talked with my mom, but I didn't talk with my dad. Or usually I saw people whispering about it, but I didn't see people openly speaking about it. I just felt like it was something that I needed to hide, but I didn't really understand why.
I would be hard pressed to find one person that menstruates that doesn't have a single embarrassing story that cringes them out to do with their periods. A few years ago, I was woken in the middle of the night by a fire drill, and I didn't have time to put on a coat or a dressing gown, and I didn't realise that I had bled all down the back of my pyjamas. And nobody told me, no girls kind of stood behind me, and I walked up the stairs with a bunch of boys behind me that wouldn't look at me or talk to me, and I didn't know why, and it was only when I went back to my room I realised. And things like this, I think, are, as I say, only minor problems living where I am, but I know that that's my experience and not everybody else's. And so the issue on the whole is so important to me, because it doesn't have to just be my experience to be a resounding experience and to be an experience that needs help.
Periods being so heavily stigmatized, oftentimes just health classes do not cover it in depth, nor do they include non-menstruators in the conversation. And I think it is so critical to have non-menstruators in the conversation just so they can understand what menstruators actually experience throughout their time when they are menstruating, and also the fact that there's different issues that often menstruators face. And it's not just the fact that it's about accessibility, but also the fact that like menstruators often in environments that are like more professional do not get the help that they need or the break that they need when they are menstruating. And I think like it just takes away from a huge conversation that we could have as a society. In general, I believe like oftentimes education from like the school systems that I've been in just talked about period maybe lightly, but they have never gone in depth into this issue. And that is where we can definitely eliminate a lot of the stigma that is surrounding this. I have definitely missed out on some critical moments in my school career because of the fact that I was in my period and I was just not able to make it to class that day. For example, tests, school activities, and things like that are very common for a lot of menstruators to miss. And it is really difficult when it is not an unexcused absence, and that just makes the issue even worse. And it feels kind of like ashamed of the fact that I even have my period. And it was really difficult to come into terms with letting go sometimes of my academic career in order to make sure that I can just like be able to accommodate to my body and being able to put my health first.
Around 4 million menstruating young people lack access to basic menstrual care items in schools, and this consists of sanitary products or bathrooms with clean water and soap, and this makes menstrual hygiene management really challenging. For every 4 menstruating young people in Brazil, around 1 of them misses classes every month during their period, and often they even drop out of school because of those reasons. So in Brazil, besides the financial burden that is to afford menstrual pads, there's also a very significant challenge that a lot of people who menstruate face, which is that schools are often not prepared or are not able to provide basic hygienic facilities for menstruating people.
In our areas, encounter menstruation when they don't have any background knowledge about it. For instance, the parents themselves are too shy to tell them about how to go about menstruation. And even the schools in our places are dominated by male teachers whom these female children fear to approach for guidance and counseling. Even the male teenagers sometimes mock at them whenever they see the signs of menstruation on them. Hence, they suffer from stigma. I would advise the world that even when they are, or when we are counseling and teaching the teenager menstruators about it, we need to even teach the boys or those who don't menstruate so that they do not stigmatize these menstruators when it happens to them. Because this stigma leads most of them to drop from school and go home when they don't know the actual home activities. They end up becoming social misfits at a younger age, and they are the ones who indulge in antisocial behaviors such as smoking, stealing, and so forth.
So I have a very relevant anecdote to share to this. In high school, I tried to organize some period product drives, and I tried to get some friends on board from different schools to organize period product drives at their own schools. And I talked to one friend in particular, and this interaction stood out to me because she attended a Catholic school, a very, very strict Catholic school. And she essentially told me, we can't do this here because the administration will not allow us to have a period product drive box out in the open in our school because sex is so stigmatized within the Catholic community. And this is not to point out any religious community. This is not to, throw shade on any community or anything like that. This is just saying this was my experience trying to set up a period product drive at my friend's school with her and having administration say, no, we can't do that, right? I don't understand why period products are grouped under the umbrella of sexual health or anything sexual in general, because whether or not we stigmatize sex, that is a separate issue, right? Periods are something that fourth graders go through. Periods are something that every menstruator will go through at some point in their life, whether or not they are sexually active. It is just a bodily function, right? It is a health issue. And I just found it fascinating how people tend to categorize periods as a sexual health issue, and for that reason stigmatize periods as well as sex, right? I don't think that sex should be a taboo. I don't think periods should be a taboo. But I don't think the two are related at all. And I think that reflects some sort of misconceptualization that really leads to issues like this being perpetuated, of misunderstanding of what periods are, misunderstanding of the issue of and scope of period poverty in the United States and other countries, misunderstanding of menstrual health issues, all of these issues that are tied to fundamentally a lack of awareness about periods.
I think like many other countries around the world, Kenya still struggles with exclusion in the workplace. The workplace really fails to accommodate menstruators in so many ways. Like, there's still so many ridiculous stigmas that label menstruation as a mere inconvenience, which for me I think is the main cause of insufficient facilities and policies. And it's often evident when someone has to choose between missing work due to lack of support and understanding, or enjoying the discomfort and going to work.
There are other women and other menstruators who every month are missing a day of work or missing a day of school. Employers don't like it. You get behind, and there's very little that you can do beyond strong painkillers to avoid this. And so if it were another condition, you were getting it monthly. If it was tonsillitis, you'd eventually get your tonsils out. But a period lasts a very long time in a menstruator's life. And so there needs to be greater intervention and conversation about what menstruators can do when they are in a situation like this, where they will not be penalised at work and they won't be treated like they're lazy or they're wusses for not coming to work or school.
As I have gone through the years, I've realized that this transfers into health issues as well, where people don't talk about PMDD, people don't talk about endometriosis, PCOS, all these conditions that women sometimes don't even know about until they experience them.
To touch a little bit more on my remote connection to premenstrual dysphoric disorder, there isn't enough conversation around it, and so my knowledge of it is that every month during ovulation, for the person I know, their life falls apart, their mind goes into overdrive, this kind of hyperfixation on everything negative in their world, and very low self-esteem, no self-belief, and it completely halts the person in their tracks. Just like a very, very bad episode of cramps would, the mental implications of periods can completely halt you in your tracks. And to be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which is a very extreme condition, when actually you're suffering from something related to periods, opens up a huge conversation about the lack of research and the lack of help for the mental problems of periods.
So in 2020, I lost my period for an entire year. And this was something I did not know could happen. First of all, I was never told that it was possible to lose your period. I thought after you get your period, you get it every single month for the rest of your menstruating years until you hit menopause. And I just didn't recognize that it was a problem until I was almost 6 months in, and I thought to myself, what is going on? I just don't have a period. So this was hypothalamic amenorrhea, and what causes that is just stress, lifestyle stress. So not sleeping enough, not eating enough, or not eating right. So in my case, I wasn't incorporating enough fats into my diet, right? And I've noticed that when I eat more fats, my mood is more stable and my period symptoms are less severe around the time of my period. And so that has been something that I've incorporated into my lifestyle to help regularize my cycles more. So there have been these two things. There's either exercising too much, exercising too little, exercising in the wrong way, stressing your body out too much, not recovering after you exercise. All of these factors, play so much, mental health, all of these factors play so much into the health of your period, and the health of your period is like this marker of how healthy you are overall, right? So if you have really irregular cycles, if you have really, really painful periods, first of all, that might be a sign of another underlying condition like endometriosis or something. But for the most part, period symptoms should not be debilitating, severe. And a lot of these can be mitigated by lifestyle changes. And that's what I found in my own personal life. That's what worked for me. I know other people who have had success with other methods, medically or otherwise, but I do think that it should be recognized that having just intense pain all the time is not normal, and you don't have to go through that. And there are ways to go about fixing that and changing that. But yeah, I think that the fact that people don't really talk about periods, even menstruator to menstruator, it's not often done, that we kind of lose an idea. We don't have a perception of what normal is. So when something is abnormal, we don't realize it because we don't know what other people are experiencing. We sort of assume that they experience the same level of debilitating pain and cramps, or the same level of insane mood swings and just pushing everyone out of your life and completely isolating yourself for a week, right? These things are not normal, but we don't know that. And the way that we find this out is by engaging in those conversations with other menstruators, if you're more comfortable with that, with people who don't menstruate even if you want to. It should be normal either way, because this is just a bodily function. It's just a bodily process, and it shouldn't be something that is weird to talk about in any sense.
I remember that I conducted some research and I reviewed that 45.6% all of the menstruators at school felt unsupported by school staff during their period. And this was reflected in pretty much many times students, menstruators needed to go to the bathroom during their period. And there were two scenarios. Either they would tell their teachers why, and they would be honest, and the teachers wouldn't let them go either way, or they would be too ashamed to tell their teachers about it. They would feel uncomfortable, and they would simply not be able to go to the bathroom. And there were also many students who reviewed that during especially PE classes, but also other classes, they would experience cramps, and they would ask to leave the class for a bit or to take some medicine, and the teachers wouldn't allow it because they would say that it's nonsense, or that they weren't really feeling that the students' pain wasn't real. So I would say that regardless of the financial situation, the lack of open conversation about it can have very significant effects on the well-being of students, on a classroom and education environment, due to the stigma and the lack of conversation, and consequently overall knowledge on the topic, both in terms of school administrators and teachers who are supposed to be able to take care of these students, and often of the students as well, who feel ashamed and don't feel comfortable talking about what they're feeling and what exactly that is going on, and why they need to go to the bathroom or leave school earlier.
In our community, menstruators face challenges related with myths in society. For instance, they believe that when a menstruator climbs a fruit tree, then the fruit tree will either wilt or produce bad fruits, or even stop bearing any fruits. This one is all a myth, and it is dangerous because it stops them from accessing these fruits, yet they are very special nutrient to them during this time.
I think it is very easy to take the issue of period stigma and say, this is because of the patriarchy. It is much more difficult to say menstruators play a significant role in carrying forth this stigma. What I've noticed is that with a lot of these restrictive customs, a lot of the ways that we talk about periods or don't talk about periods in society, that is perpetuated by menstruators. And the people who have the power to change that is menstruators, right? We are the ones who start those conversations, who can start those conversations. Being intentional about starting conversations about periods and other stigmatized things that you don't think should be stigmatized can really help other people maybe have those moments where they realize, oh, I can talk about that? That isn't a taboo thing that I should never discuss in front of anyone ever? And when you help other people have those moments of realization, they will go on to talk to other people about periods, anything else that you think shouldn't be stigmatized. And it creates this snowball effect where culturally there is less stigma, right? I think we've really seen this in the US in the past just several years, right? Even in the past decade, periods have become so much easier to talk about in public because there are so many more people doing this. The menstrual equity movement has grown, and I think with that, people have come to a better understanding of what period poverty is, what menstrual equity is, just issues surrounding periods. There is legislation being advanced in many states that has passed in many states to combat period poverty in schools and in other settings. And I think that is just evidence of how far it can go when you are willing to talk about periods and you are willing to break that stigma internally in order to break that stigma externally. I think that's a really important way to frame that, because a lot of us go about our lives with this shame internally about our periods, about, menstruating. And when we have that shame, we allow that shame to perpetuate. But when you openly discuss these issues with people, whether they menstruate or not, and obviously keeping in mind their comfort, if that is a concern, you set a standard, you set a precedent for what it is to talk about periods and whether it is okay to talk about periods, and you make it okay to discuss further issues that are connected with it.
People experiencing period poverty are unable to purchase the products they need. And this means that they cannot go to school, work, or participate in daily activities. Poor menstrual health and hygiene results in physical, mental, and emotional challenges. And the stigma associated with it often prevents individuals from talking about it and seeking help when necessary.
I believe that it's important to emphasize that promoting menstrual hygiene and addressing period poverty is not solely the responsibility of menstruators or women. I believe that it's also important to say that many young menstruators go to their mother for help when they get their first period. However, this isn't the case for everyone. There are a lot of people who lose their mothers at a young age or are raised by their fathers, and those people, those menstruators, can often find themselves without the necessary knowledge to deal with their periods or to deal often with period poverty too, if the non-menstruators in their lives don't know anything about it. And I believe that we should emphasize the importance of having men and having people who are non-menstruators also a big part of the conversation, and willing to have frank, open conversations with their children, with the people around them about menstruation, because if they don't, it can often lead to stigma and to shame.
A common stigma that often women in America face is the fact that periods can make them more aggressive, periods are getting in the way of their work, which is completely untrue. And it's the fact that I have heard sentences like, oh, leave her alone, she's on her period, or leave them alone, they're just being really rude because, they're on their period. And it is so difficult to be in an environment where periods are taken as a joke.
Good menstrual hygiene enables people who menstruate to live a self-determined life because it promotes access to education, health, and equitable livelihood opportunities. Additionally, addressing period poverty plays a significant role in achieving several of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, such as SDG 1, No Poverty, SDG 3, Good Health and Well-being, SDG 4, Quality Education, SDG 5, Gender Equality, and SDG 6, Clean Water and Sanitation for All. Not only do menstruators need an affordable, accessible, and environmentally friendly period product, they also require a hygienic and supportive environment where they can menstruate with dignity.
Taking action and having the conversation to end period stigma is critical to fighting period poverty in general. Having people who are educated in period poverty is much better than having those who simply just know the term period. It is so important that people who are in our representative bodies, senators, our legislators in general, know that period poverty is a huge concern for society today. So being able to spread the word, to get laws
in place and implemented to help menstruators all across America and just in general better the world is so important. And also the fact that we should be advocating for those who are in lower income areas, who are in the lower income range, have access to free period products. And not only that, schools in general should have access to free period products, considering they serve menstruators every single day. It is so critical that education is a huge focus, and also the fact that with education comes reform, and so it is so critical that we all fight for these reforms to happen sooner than later.
Finally, I know that I'm on a university campus in the UK that is very vocal, very supportive about all sorts of things, periods included, and I'm very lucky. I'm also not naive enough to think that it's like this even 2 postcodes away. But what I would say is that if stigma is causing shame and embarrassment, try and remember that stigma is purely that. It only exists because of what it is. And to eradicate stigma, we have to have conversations that educate the ignorant people that are propelling this stigma forward.
So, from my experience, periods are talked about in schools to some extent, right? I've talked to friends who went to maybe Catholic schools that are very conservative that didn't really talk about periods, even if they were required to, maybe by the state, because that is schools are mandated to talk about periods at school at some point with their students, right, by law, in I think most of the United States. But there are a lot of gaps in this education, and there are a couple of ways that we could improve upon it. So one major gap that I've seen is that we don't really talk about menstrual health. We talk about what a period is. We do not talk about what are some common concerns that you might have about your period. When should you be concerned about not having a period or skipping a couple of cycles? How can I take care of my health so that I have a regular menstrual cycle and so that my symptoms are not debilitating and life-altering? How can I manage my lifestyle and live in accordance with my menstrual cycle? Because that's so important, right? I used to have really bad menstrual symptoms before I adjusted my lifestyle to live in the flow with the flow, right? And that was never talked about in my family life experience, in the family life experience of the friends that I've talked to. It could be different in different parts of the US, and I think that it does vary very greatly between states, between schools, between localities, all of this. Another, I suppose, area for improvement within how we talk about menstrual health with students who maybe haven't gotten their periods yet or are just getting their periods or around that age, is that we could actually engage students in these discussions. It's very much recognized, just like in terms of education, that it's much more effective educationally when you engage your students in the learning, right? And you're not just talking at them. And I just don't think that we've applied this psychology to talking about family life, talking about periods. And I think it would have been, personally, I think it would have been so helpful to be asked those questions. For example, have any of you heard of a period? Have any of you started your periods? Do any of you have sisters or friends who have started their periods? What have they told you? And just being able to start that conversation with students so that they know that it's okay to talk about periods. And those are their first words, in this realm, and they have that stepping stone to be able to have more meaningful conversations about periods, about their menstrual health with other menstruators, with the community of other menstruators. And it sort of creates that community. It normalizes talking about periods for them. And I think that's so important. I think that's really an area that we're missing out on in terms of menstrual education, that engaging students and talking about menstrual health.
In terms of what we can do individually and as communities, the PAD project has shown me such an amazing force of women joining together to do this from all parts of the world, and it does reflect that there is a huge part of society that will always drive for positive change. And I think to focus on the negative statistics can be informative and give us a starting place, but they also shouldn't be the complete focus. If there's anything that you're interested in working towards, whether it's to do with homelessness or the migrant crisis, or in our case, period poverty, there's a lot around you. It might not have the advertising, it might not have the promotion, it might be an NGO, but if you look for it, it's there, and you can find a niche where your voice will be acknowledged and appreciated.
I am aware that volunteering at an organization or initiating a local project can seem very intimidating. So I would say that for anyone who's looking to get involved in the cause, maybe with advocacy, a good way to start, personally, I believe that is to create and mediate conversations with people you trust. So be it menstruators and non-menstruators, usually even in our homes we have people, like maybe we talk to our moms about it, but we feel quite uncomfortable to talk to our dads about it. I believe that this is something quite common. So if you are looking to get into this field of advocacy and you want to generate some positive change in your community, I would very much recommend that you start by talking with people that you trust and that you've never really spoken about this topic before with that person. I believe that you're going to have a very interesting, opening, and welcoming conversation, and it is going to make you feel more comfortable to take the next steps in the future and looking and seeking to generate some positive impact wherever it is that you live.
Let us work together to mitigate the challenges faced by the menstruators here and far. We need to treat these people as our brothers, as our sisters, as our mothers, and even as our children. Let's guide and counsel them. They will be free, study well, and stay in school.
Hello, my name is Isabel Kavanagh and I am an advocacy ambassador for the PAD project, living in Guildford in the United Kingdom.
Hello, my name is Maria Clara. I am based in Joinville, which is a city in the very south of Brazil, and I am an advocacy ambassador for the PAD project.
Hello, my name is Gabriel Benedict. I am from Kisoro district, Uganda, and a menstrual equity advocate.
Hi, my name is Maureen and I'm from Kenya. I am a mental health and menstrual equity advocate who thrives on the power of words.
Hi, I'm Pooja Mutharaj and I am a menstrual equity advocate from Richmond, Virginia in the United States of America.
Hello, my name is Elu Noah and I'm a menstrual equity advocate from Liberia.
Hi, I'm Amol. I'm a menstrual equity and period poverty activist here in New York. One thing about menstrual poverty that has really drawn me to this issue is the fact that it is heavily stigmatized in American society, and often menstruators are shunned in their communities too. For example, I'm South Asian, and it has been a huge issue to just even bring up the topic because of the fact that it is heavily discriminated against, and often menstruators feel like they have no one to turn to, and I really want to change that through my advocacy work.
Hi, my name is Arushi. I am the creator of Sincerely People with Periods. I'm from the state of Virginia. I am a menstrual equity advocate and ambassador for the PAD Project organization, and I am working on a bill to expand menstrual education in the state of Virginia.